everybody, it's Ola aka Chalk One alongside Katie aka Peekaboo Bang for Battlefield Podcast episode 165. This is going to be another of the newer, shorter, compressed, more concise versions of the podcast in which we pick 3 topics. And this time we're going to talk about Final Stand a little bit. Now, we've played it for a couple of weeks, so we'll tell you a little bit about what we think. We'll talk about the changes to the medic bag that were recently introduced in the latest BF4 patch. And we'll look forward to some potential changes coming out of the CTE involving colored hit markers, which are kind of cool. Now, we'll talk more about that later, but right off the bat, I should say that my CTE didn't work. So we didn't get to... I really wanted Katie to shoot me a whole bunch and show off the different colors. But yeah, for some reason, mine was foobarred, so
your CTE was fail.
Yeah, I don't know what was wrong with it. It's very strange. I've never really had that happen before. It's like the Battlelog site didn't know that the game was there. I couldn't update it. I couldn't even uninstall it. I had to delete it to get Origin to understand it's gone. And it still won't let me install it. It tries and then it fails, so who knows? But Final Stand's been out for a couple of weeks now, 3 or so weeks, and I will admit that probably a good 60% of my playing time in Final Stand has been looking for dog tags and Phantom Bow related items. It's true.
No.
But, no, you don't think so?
No, we spent a good amount of time playing, like actually playing, before we even...
We did. It's one of the reasons we didn't do this sooner. We didn't want to be like, let us tell you what we think of Final Stand, where we spent 42 minutes total.
Playing, yeah. Right.
Now, there's probably still, we haven't really played it a lot in some of the other game modes. Most of the time we played it in Conquest. We played a little bit of Domination the other day. On one of the maps, yeah. I haven't tried any Rush. Let alone
TDM
any...
maybe, but I don't think it was the new maps. I think Slats just wanted to play TDM.
Yeah,
so that's what
yeah, something else. But what do you think overall, as far as a DLC, and maybe I guess we can compare it to the quality of the other DLCs in BF4? Like, what do you think? It's supposedly the last DLC.
I think it was a little meh.
Yeah.
That's the best I can come up with description-wise. Like, I can kind of see, like, it's fun. Snowmobiles are fun. And, they're pretty maps, yet again. But there was nothing, for me, at least, like, overly standout-ish. Nothing really just stood out to me.
Where would you rank it in comparison to the other DLCs for BF4? Like, I think we talked about this before. We said I think China Rising was your least favorite, which I agreed with.
Right. China Rising was awful.
Yeah.
Naval Strike would be number 1. Number 2 would be whatever they called Second Assault.
Second Assault, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Only because there are so many things that's the only reason that's number 2 is because there were so many things that they did in those maps that I wanted to reach over and smack someone for. Like the wall.
Yeah, we talked about some changes that we wish they hadn't made to that.
So I think Naval Strike is my favorite just out of like how much fun they were just overall. The vanilla maps were good.
Mm-hmm. Are we missing a DLC that I'm trying to think of? We got Second Assault, China Rising, Dragon's Teeth. That one wasn't too bad. We played that a fair bit.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad.
I have this, I don't know.
But it's just us, like, when they say, like, vanilla maps, they mean the original game. But to me, they're all vanilla, as in they're all pretty bland.
Yeah, they're all...
You know what I mean?
To your point, they're all beautiful maps. But they're almost... over-designed. I don't know what it is, to be honest. Like, if someone said, give me your 3 ingredients to a perfect or really good DLC for BF4, I don't know if I can put my finger on that anymore.
Well, for me, I look back at Battlefield 3, and I look back at...
Close Quarters.
Oh, God. Close Quarters and...
Aftermath?
Yes. And those are the 2 I I base it on are Close Quarters and Aftermath.
There isn't really a style of map in BF4 in any of the DLCs or the base game that somehow compares to Close Quarters.
Mm-mm. And just looking back on like the amount of time I spent in each DLC. Now, granted, I did spend a ridiculous amount of time playing Metro, but that's because that's what our clan ran. That's what our server was on.
One
whatever.
Of those extremes that doesn't count. Like it's an outlier.
Right.
You toss that out.
And I'm an infantry map kind of girl. So when Armored Kill came out, I was like, holy crap, I'm not going to spend... No, the only reason I went into those maps was to play with Gimlet so he could drive a tank and blow shit up. That was the only reason I ever got in those maps. Or played that DLC. But Aftermath and Close Quarters, played the heck out of those.
Yeah, I think that Final Stand... I feel like I've been playing it more than the other maps right now because it is the newer stuff. I have enjoyed some of the gameplay we've had, even in Conquest Large, where it seems like the one thing they did a pretty good job of is sort of segmenting the map. Even if it's a large map that has large outdoor areas, you can spend an entire round between one or two flags indoors somewhere and kind of try to do that infantry style of play that we like. We did that once on Operation Whiteout, where I don't think we really stepped outside for like a good solid 15 to 20 minutes. We were just around a couple of flags back and forth, and that was enjoyable.
Of the maps, I think Whiteout is my favorite.
Whiteout, Whiteout's the one we played the most. Mm-hmm. I think it has the most variety.
Hammerhead is a little awkwardly laid out, like that one flag off to the... It's a little strange.
Yeah. Hangar is one of those semi-night maps that I'm not a fan of at all. And Giants of Corellia is such a large map. It's really a map for people who like vehicles.
I actually really like Giants, to be honest.
Well, yeah. We did a lot of running.
I think because it has a lot of feel from... Like, it feels kind of like, to me, Caspian border. Like, it feels like, in a way, like it's got that same, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the hills and the trees and it just has a little bit of a Caspian border feel for me.
It does. And that's another one of those maps Giants. Where, again, we played that in Domination the other day where it's all indoors around, I don't know what flag that is, B and C maybe. And
Foxtrot, I think, is what it would be on Conquest Large, right. Like that one off to where the trucks are.
Yeah, and it's all indoors. And that was quite fun. And again, so in a Conquest game, if you have lots of players, so if you're playing in a 64-man Conquest server, you can almost turn that into your own mini domination around a couple of those flags if you decide to just stay there and patrol those, because there's enough people there that you'll always be busy defending flags and trying to attack them again. So that, for some reason, I think that, I don't know if that was intentional, if that's just some sort of byproduct, but it feels like that is working well on these maps, better in my opinion than it did on Naval Strike. Naval Strike had, well, except for the actual carrier, had basically no indoor area, so you were always susceptible to attack from people in helicopters or jets flying at somehow magically 5 knots.
The one with the submarine, there was like 2 or 3 flags near inside.
True. Yes, and I enjoyed that part of that map as well.
Yeah.
Which is strange, because I started in BF... Well, I started in 1942, but with BF2, I was always a big vehicle guy. And in BF3, I enjoyed a lot of time in helicopters and tanks as well. Not so much in BF4. And that's because of some of the changes to that game. I just... I don't know. It's not the same. I don't have the same enjoyment that I used to get in BF3 out of playing in vehicles.
I think of the DLC maps, my favorite is Whiteout.
I would have to agree with that.
It's very hothy.
It is, and it's
like I expect to see Tauntauns running around. You know what I mean? Like,
I think if people compare it to Battlefront, that's in development, a lot of people will say like, okay, well, Operation Whiteout is clearly some sort of, even though it's probably really far-fetched and made by an entirely different team, whatever. But it's like that's where they tested snow and snowstorms and stuff, and
it's still kind of fun. It's different.
It is. In Domination, that map's not very much fun, because you end up all outside around those giant icebergs with a lot of snipers up on hills and stuff like that. So much of it depends on the game mode as well, because it really does change things. Overall, I think Final Stand for me personally was an okay DLC. It was not as good as I would have liked, but on the level of BF4's standards for DLCs, it was okay. It was pretty good, actually.
You know what's sad? I think like the end game, it always gets this kind of sad ending. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like as a terrible metaphor, it just goes limp. It just goes limp at the end. Because, I mean, Endgame, and I feel bad for BF3 Endgame because it didn't get, I mean, I had a lot of fun on Endgame, not as much as I did Aftermath and Close Quarters, but I don't think it was a terrible DLC. And Final Stand isn't terrible. It's not China Rising, and it's not, Rush on Dragon's Teeth or, some of those maps. So I think in the long run, it's just going to get forgotten, just kind of like Endgame did in BF3.
Could. I think it's going to get a fair amount of playing time because of people trying to get the Phantom Bow stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Even though those servers, you can always tell, there'll be 64-man servers that have 6 people in them. But, hey, that's a legitimate way to get people to experience the maps. One thing looking for all those dog tags was quite helpful in getting to know the maps, because you ended up running all over the place that you ordinarily wouldn't. So that's sort of a welcome side effect from that, I guess. And is it going to be the last DLC? There's still rumors that there's more to come. I don't know. Heartline's only now 4 months away.
There was a tweet from someone saying more on the 9th.
Yeah.
Possibly was the rumor that there would be more announced on the 9th.
There's also rumors about more Phantom Initiative, assignments and Easter eggs and stuff. I've seen another reference to some sort of prehistoric shark again, and there's apparently an undiscovered Easter egg for anybody that uses a gamepad to control vehicles. That apparently has been in since day one, and nobody has figured out yet. It's some sort of alternate input method for driving or flying. I don't know. I'm sure people are all over that by now, but we'll see what that's like, I guess. Now, the latest patch brought, it was one of those mega patches that brought in a whole bunch of changes. And one of the changes that it brought in that was sort of, it was in the change notes, but it was probably more significant than it sounded, was a change to the medic bag. So we're talking about the large medic bag, not the small ones that you throw at people. And the way it works regarding suppression and in water. So on the simple side, medic bags no longer heal you when they're in water. Which you might think, okay, well, that's not a big deal. But it can make a bit of a difference in Metro, for example, where medics are rampant. And they're, if the train tunnels are flooded,
yeah.
That makes a big difference then. The other change is that while you are suppressed, you do not get healed by a medic bag. Which, on paper, probably sounded like a good idea, because I think the idea was that you want to prevent people from hogging corners with the med bag right next to them and basically constantly being healed, even though I don't know if that was actually a problem.
They're trying to ruin my cornering skill.
Yes, I think we used that actually at one point.
Yeah, we did go over that in a video. There's a whole video on cornering and how to do it properly. And so that's a little frustrating, but I'm going to play devil's advocate on this for a second. I really don't see that much of an issue with it because I'm coming from a background where in Counter-Strike, you get shot. There's no health regen. You die.
Right.
When you're playing 5v5, you're actually playing how the game was, meant to be played. You're not pubbing or, weird game mode situations. So for me, it's kind of like, okay. But on the other hand, it's like the suppression models in Battlefield 4 are completely different than what they were in Battlefield 3. And you're suppressed. I feel like depending on, what you're doing, you're suppressed 90% of the time. constantly being suppressed, even in situations you shouldn't be.
Yes.
You know, whether it's by splash damage or concussion or whatever they want to call it within the game. Like, you're getting suppressed when you're completely surrounded by cover and there's one sniper, like, shooting 10 feet away from you. You're suppressed. Like, fully suppressed, not just a little tiny bit suppressed. So maybe changing, like, the rate of, not completely dropping it off, but the rate of health regen would have been something different depending on, you know, how much you're suppressed.
Right.
But I don't know. At first, I didn't see that much of a problem with it, or that, you know, I didn't think of it as that big of a deal.
No, you and I talked about it when we first read those notes before we actually got a chance to play it. We said, you know what, that doesn't sound like it would be that big of a deal. But for me, the suppression doesn't always seem to turn off when it should. I don't have a problem with the med bag not working while you're being suppressed. I have a problem with when I'm under fire and I'm suppressed and I move behind cover, like well behind cover, and drop my med bag because I was just hurt, and I have to wait several seconds before it starts healing me. Like, I should not be suppressed for that long because the suppression effect is long gone at that point. So I think there's some tweaking that they still need to do. The other thing that in sort of fundamentally I have a bit of an issue with is them making changes like that this late in the game. I appreciate that they want to continue to, you know, that they see the game as a service that lives on and that they continue to improve. But I don't know if that's...
change, you're right. That change, it was a little late in the, you know, the game, so to speak, to then come in and change... I
don't feel like it improves the game in any way. It changes it. And I don't know if change for the sake of change is a good thing.
The only thing it really does to me is sort of buff your support class a little bit. Because they're the ones that should be doing a heavy amount of suppressing.
Right. So, but they have no... They may buff it in the sense that they're more effective.
Right.
For their team as a whole. But for the individual, knowing players in general, they don't get... you know, any extra points or any extra incentive for that matter. So I know that one of the arguments was that the assault class has always been the most used and they feel like it's maybe overpowered a bit. But I've been thinking all the way back, the assault class has always been probably one of the most used ones, depending on the playstyle, of course. If you have an infantry heavy map, assault is most likely going to be one of your first choices because you can heal yourself, you can heal others, you can revive others. It's, you know, it's very hard.
Or you can be a selfish asshole and run around with an M320 and not heal anyone. You know what I mean? Like, and they did it to only the large med bags. The smaller ones, it doesn't matter. You can still run around and toss those out like candy.
The smaller ones don't seem to work very well, though. I did that the other time we played.
They don't.
And I switched to them, and I haven't used them in months and months. I used to use them at the very beginning when that's all you had until you unlocked the full medic bag. And I felt like they used to sort of, you would throw them at a person and they would almost get attracted to them, like magnetically a little bit. Whereas now I'm just tossing them around and they don't go anywhere. Like they go right past somebody's head and it's like, okay, come on. You know, I used to think that was actually one of the benefits of them is that you could easily toss them at a teammate and they would sort of attach themselves to them and heal them for a little while. But I don't know if it was my game or if it was that server or whatever, but it didn't seem to work very well. All in all, I don't know. I mean, I think people will get used to it. I think they'll probably tweak it some more, but it seemed like one of those changes that I didn't think was necessary, maybe. And there's, you know, all of that takes effort, right? All these changes take effort by a bunch of people at DICE to test, to put through CTE, to get people to try it out, and then to implement it finally. So I think there's probably better use of time and resources.
And I still don't feel like for your average player, like they'll know something's different, but they won't be able to put their finger on it. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to be something that...
What they'll know, though, is they'll think that the med bags are broken because they'll drop one down. I've done it myself. Drop it down, stand there, and I'm not getting healed. And I'm like, what's going on? Why is it? What's wrong with that thing? And then it starts working. You're like, oh, that's right. Yeah, I was supposedly suppressed.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a, quote, easy mode class, unquote.
No, and I actually think that if you wanted to, quote-unquote, nerf the assault class, or the medic part of it in particular, give them some more compelling other gadgets to take the place of those med bags. Because I run with the med bag almost exclusively because the only other thing I would want to use there is smoke, I guess. And there are very few situations that call for smoke. It can be very useful. I know that we've talked about this in Metro for strategies and stuff. It's very effective at times, but it's sort of very particular scenarios that you'd use that in. So maybe if there was other alternatives that would be more compelling to use, it would take a lot for me to switch away from a med bag, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm.
And I've never been a proponent of the whole OP thing when it comes to guns, and I guess the same applies to classes. They all serve their own purpose. A spawn beacon can be very OP if used properly. So.
Yep.
Now, speaking of things that they're doing in the CTE, the other thing that's currently in testing is the ability to change the color and style of the Hitmarkers, which you went and tested out.
Yeah, I got to play around with it a little bit.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about how it works. Like, what are the options?
It's in your settings, and you can change the size of the hit indicator that you get. And then you can also change the color depending on hit type. So, like, you can change between, red, blue, and green. You can change them, for general hit anywhere on the body. And then you can change the color for headshot indicator specifically so that you know when you've hit someone in the head. And then the other one is a kill shot indicator. So, which is nice because specifically in BF4, I've had a lot of trouble telling when people are dead, like when their body is a body. So seeing that flash of color that, okay, that was the kill shot. Okay, now I know they're dead.
Mm-hmm. That's I think, going to be very useful. There's been times where I thought somebody was dead and let off the trigger, and then I got killed by
weren't,
that guy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, with their 2% health or whatever it was, yes. And you're raging on the other end. Yeah, so that I think will be very useful. I think it just popped in my head that that's going to be helpful.
It will. So when you set red, green, blue, by the way, people should know that those are RGB sliders going anywhere from 0 to 100% of that color. So any color you can think of, you can set it to, whether you want hot pink or brown or some sort of shade of green. It's all there.
Just went with the fact that there's 3 hit types and 3 colors, and I made 1 red, 1 green, 1 blue.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. Now, the one thing I didn't see, it doesn't give you a preview of the color in the menus, does it?
No, it does not.
That would be nice, because going 100% red is, that's pretty obvious, but if you wanted to look for, let's say you wanted orange, which is a mix of red and green and blue or whatever, all 3 of them together. Shush.
Red and yellow.
But yellow isn't one of the sliders, so
yes,
you
I know.
have some magic.
Right, you have to play with it there.
It would be nice if there was some preview, so as you're moving the sliders, you could actually see what the result is, as opposed to having to, change it, try it, change it, try it. But that's, again, it's in testing. There may still be tweaks to that. It's not out yet. But to me, that's one of those additions to the game. It's not a change that I think is great. It's going to be, and it's not too late for that. You know what? I think that's cool that they're doing that. I think it's going to be very helpful to see the difference between a headshot and a regular hit. And the kill shot especially is going to be a great feature. And I'm hoping that will come out sooner rather than later into the actual live game. But
yeah. I'm a little surprised this isn't something that wasn't in already. Like, I'm a little surprised that this is something they're just now playing around with or toying around with and testing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's partially, again, my Counter-Strike background, where you could change the color of your crosshair and,
yeah, and it's something,
keep it from being dynamic. I mean, I know this isn't, you're not changing the color of your crosshair here. This is the hit indicator, the hit markers.
Right.
This has nothing to do with your crosshair at the, except for when you're...
With all the netcode issues that were had in BF4, especially in the beginning, there was always a lot of talk about hit markers. So, it's a little odd that they only did this now, but to me, this is one of those cases. If you're used to it in BF3, you couldn't do it either. You know, yes, if you compare it to games like Counter-Strike, you might be missing that option, but it's coming now,
Well, it's just
hopefully.
they made things so customizable in BF4. I mean, a little more than
Yeah.
BF3.
In
It's a
yeah,
little
in
more
other
in
ways.
depth. Yeah, so it's like, you know, I'm a little surprised it's only now coming up something to be in the CTE.
Yeah. The other thing that's in there is a damage type based indicator, which makes your hit markers larger or smaller depending on the amount of damage you've dealt, which apparently has been in the CTE for a while now, but isn't in the live game yet. But that's something I would also like to try out and see what that feels like. Because that's the other thing. That would give you another indication of how much damage you've done to somebody. Because sometimes it feels like you've pumped bullet after bullet into somebody. But, if you're hitting them with a small caliber and you're hitting them in the leg, you might not actually be doing very much damage. So all that stuff can potentially help you out a lot in game. So,
Yeah.
real quick,
I
this
think it's a
isn't...
good change. I'd really like to see it in the live game.
Yeah, I would too. And hopefully we will soon. And hopefully, I mean, maybe they'll tweak it a bit if they give us a color preview. I'm sure they could even give us one of the standard color pickers, the little square where you just drag it around to the color that you want, that we're used to in sort of any other application or website where you're picking a color. They can probably do something like that too.
Well, it's already in the emblem maker, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on
Or no,
Battlelog.
yeah.
Yeah, it's all over that place. But the other thing apparently they're working on is they're completely reworking the flight model of helicopters and jets in the CTE, which I only heard about briefly, but I've seen a video that you can now do barrel rolls in helicopters. So as opposed to when they just went...
There's at least one server that's specifically dedicated to air testing.
Yeah, because I guess in the current model, if you turn a helicopter anywhere near 90 degrees, they won't turn past 90 degrees sideways, and they pretty much just flop to the ground. So seeing that video of people doing all sorts of tricks with helicopters again reminded me of Battlefield 2, where you could do that. And I'm really hoping that it's going to make it a little bit more enjoyable for me to fly again. I'm really hoping. And they're also going to tweak, I think, the Scout helicopters a bit, because they're pretty powerful. But that's probably the kind of tweaking that will take some time. So I'm hoping they won't tie the colors of the hit markers to the new flight model, because hit markers seem pretty easy to me to do. It's already there. It seems to work fine. Roll with it. Don't wait for them to fix flying. It seems like a bigger task. So, any final thoughts on any of that?
Not really, no.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you change the color of your hit marker, you know what's going on a little bit more. I mean, anything to make you more battle aware is something that makes me happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And customizable is always nice, because some people have, a more difficult time seeing things. Even on some of these maps, like Operation Whiteout, where it is very white, it could be useful to have hit markers in a different color, even if you just change it for that one round. So, all right, let us know what you think in the comments. This is going to be up in audio form on iTunes as well, of course. You can find all you need to know about how to subscribe, how to sign up for the podcast, get it on your phone, on your iTunes, wherever you listen to things. All your digital stuff, have it on your toaster, patent pending. You can find that at battlefieldpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I'm Ola, aka Chalk1.
And I'm Peekaboo Bang.